Tonight is Cynthia Powell with Calflora. Cynthia has a Master's of Science in Geographic Information Science. She's worked for Calflora since 2013, and she's been the Executive Director since 2016. In that time, she has brought forward a number of new programs for Calflora, including the data sharing with iNaturalist and the really excellent photo contest. And there are, of course, other programs that she will tell you about. This is tonight, by the way, is a more advanced Calflora program, but you can still ask, basic questions if you're new to Calflora. So don't be constrained by the slightly more advanced nature of tonight's program. So welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video and move this. Maybe I should leave my video on. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Here. Okay. Great. And Margaret, if there's questions that are just burning questions that people are putting in the chat that I should answer before moving to the next slide, please let me know. Let's start this from the beginning. There we go. Calflora tools for Cnps users, and this is a postfire Dudleya by Ron Vanderhoff. And you can obscure locations of rare plants or any plants if you don't want someone to know the exact location that you found it in Calflora, and that way you have access to exactly where it was, but nobody else will. And if you do want to share that exact location with a handful of people who you trust, that's an option as well. Start with some basics, and as Orchid said, it is an advanced presentation, but I'm still going to start with some basics. What is Calflora exactly? 501c3 nonprofit plant database. And we provide information on wild California plants for conservation, education, and appreciation. Here's the team. And I have, as Orchid pointed out, a Master's of Science in GIS. So I'm a database person, and I've learned a lot about plants since I worked at Calypsy after graduating, and then moved to Calflora doing GIS stuff, and now the Executive Director of Calflora. So if you have comments on any of the records I have in Calflora, please comment. You can make comments on Calflora records and let me know if I got something not right, and you can do that on all records too. And then that begins a sequence of events which lets people know, hey, there's a question. I actually just got a message from Diane Lake before this meeting saying, hey, I think that this is a different variety than the one that I thought it was. So it's very useful. And we have a lot of dedicated volunteers on the Calflora team, including COVID-safe volunteer activities such as searching for and finding reference photos to help people identify the plants that they're trying to figure out what is this exactly, and the reference photos really help with that. So if you're interested in choosing which photos should be reference photos, that's let me know. And here's my email address, cpowell@calflora.org. Then we have Michelle, Daryl, John, Ed, also on the team. We also have Pete Fry. He's new. I should add him to this slide. The Calflora database contains over 10,000 native and introduced species, 2 million plant location observations, points, lines, and polygons. Some people say, what's the use of a polygon? What is or a line? Why not just have a point and that's where the plant is? Why do you have to get so complicated? It can be actually easier if there's a lot of a certain species to say, over these several acres, you will find, well, it could be an invasive species like goat grass, or you'll find this Clarkia, or whatever it is that you're looking at, instead of saying there's a point here and a point here and a point here. So it's a pretty efficient way to add information to the database. As you know, names change for better or for worse. And if you're looking up an old name or a new name or old name, we crosswalk the names together. That's the verb. So that whatever name you're looking for will bring you to the current name. Or if you know the current name, you can also see what the old names used to be. We have over 300,000 plant photos. A lot of them come from you guys, your chapter. There's some amazing photographers in your chapter. I'm going to show some of those photos in a minute here. And also we serve photos from Calphotos as well. They generously share their photos with us. We have had about 80,000 unique e-visitors each month to the database. That was our average until the COVID, and it's gone up quite a bit because people are online and probably, hopefully now outdoors more than they were before. So a lot of people visiting Calflora. Most of our traffic is on the so-called taxon report pages, and that's what I'm going to go over tonight. What is that? How is it useful? And how can you even make them better? And then about 4,000 active data contributors. I'm hoping that all of you will become active data contributors if you're not already, because CNPS chapters are really valuable sources of information for Calflora, whether that's a plant list, a checklist that you've seen in a specific open space or a specific area. And it's not just like 1 point per species, but it's within this whole area. I have seen these 300 species or these 30 species. CNPS chapters have that information, and it is extremely valuable to get it into Calflora, and it then serves all of our different applications, like the planting guide, which we'll be going over tonight, what grows here, which we'll be going over tonight, observation search. So anytime you say within this area, I found these 36 species, that informs everything. Or within this area, I saw this one species, also important. But without active data contributors, we wouldn't be the powerful and thorough and accurate database that we are now. And CNPS chapters tend to have very accurate data, which we value. All 10,000 plus native and introduced species, which is all wild plant species in the state, are in the Calflora database. And we receive, so we have Calflora data, sort of native data, which comes from users, using Observer Pro, which is our phone app to collect data, or uploading their photos directly to Calflora, or adding their plant list, their checklist directly to Calflora. So those are the Calflora so-called native sources. We also have a CCH feed, which is specimens, and we're in the process of updating that from CCH1 to CCH2. And we'll be really excited to be able to serve even more up-to-date specimen data through the CCH2 data feed. And we also do serve iNaturalist data. We filter it a lot. And if you're looking for something, say you have observations in iNaturalist that you're not seeing in Calflora, I can show you how to find those. Or if there's, if you want to search Calflora for a certain species that you think iNaturalist, there's more observations in iNaturalist than Calflora is reflecting, you can pull those in also. We filter the iNaturalist data quite a bit to try and, I don't know what the right word is exactly, but to try and take the good and leave the rest, but it's a hard thing to do automatically. So what are we not? Because we start with this Cal, I always feel like I should clarify. People think, oh, you're part of UC because Cal, like Cal Berkeley. But we're not part of the UC system. We're not part of Calphotos, although we serve Calphotos photos. We're not part of the California Invasive Plant Council. They're their own separate nonprofit, and I used to work for them, so there's a lot of partnership and crossover there. And we're not part, as you guys probably know, because you are CNPS, we're not part of CNPS. That is its own separate nonprofit. And Calflora has been its own nonprofit since the year 2000. So tonight I'd like to talk about Calflora taxon report pages, map layers, planting guide, iNaturalist, and your questions. And I'm going to focus on your region of the state, because probably most of you, although maybe not all of you, are from there. And I live up in Oakland, so I don't know that much about your species. So, and you do, which is great. So I think it's good to emphasize what you have growing where you live. If I could get this thing out of the way, that would be great. I think did it before. How did I do it? Oh, okay, well, here we have, this is the nuts and bolts of Calflora. You have a species, scientific name, common name, a map with a bunch of blue dots showing the distribution within the state, and then reference photos. For the reference photos, your chapter, I present to a lot of Cnps chapters, so I'm looking through these photos, and our volunteers are curating them and figuring out where are the best ones. Your chapter is quite represented, which is great. Here's a photo, for example, by Helena of this heliotrope, and you can just move this so you can see. So you can scroll on the Calflora website. This is a static presentation, but on the Calflora website, you can scroll up and down through the reference photos to see more photos, good photos of a specific species. And that's what we have volunteers doing, is sorting these photos, getting rid of some, adding new ones. It's kind of a constantly improving system. So Helena, thank you for your beautiful photo here. And when you see these blue dots, if you're wondering what, like say you see an outlier up here on the North Coast, you're like, does it really grow there? I mean, probably in this case it does, but if you see a severe outlier from the Calflora website, you can click on that and drill down and see who said it grows there, when did they say it, could it be inaccurate, or is it accurate? And that's really interesting. And this is the Farallon Islands here, so that looks like a blue dot floating in the ocean, but it's actually on land. All right. Here is this gorgeous Calochortus, and John Thompson, who's on the line tonight, has the first reference photo of the species, which is a coveted position, and drives me crazy that I can't move this thing out of the way. So there, now you can see his whole photo. And his photo, it might be in a different place, it might be number 2 tomorrow instead of number 1, because the volunteers are always finding better. I mean, could they find a better photo than this? We'll see. But that's another example of your chapter members contributing photos, and not every photo becomes a reference photo. Even if you have a really bad photo documenting that you saw something somewhere, don't be shy about adding it to Calflora. And it doesn't, only the best photos are chosen as reference photos, but other photos can still just document, this is what I saw, it's good enough. I saw it here. It's not the most gorgeous photo, it won't be a reference photo, but that's fine. And if you don't have photos, like for your checklist for a specific area, that's fine too. Not every observation has to have a photo, and not every survey has to have a photo. It is helpful if you do have them, but not to fear if you don't. Oh, this Claytonia, gorgeous. Jane Terrell, I hope she's on the line. And interestingly, this is a rare plant, the lanceolata variety, which is being blocked. Pearsonii, Pearson Spring Beauty. So there are only 2 photos available for this Claytonia, and they're both by Jane Terrell. And Calphotos doesn't have any. So if you know this species, or if you go out with Jane and find it, please add it to Calflora, because we could use, like, say, a close-up of the stem and a close-up of the whole flower, and we would just add more reference photos to this species. And these yellow squares down here mean that it's a rare species. So we get another data feed that we have that I haven't mentioned yet, comes from CNDDB, the California Natural Diversity Database that's run by the state, and they give us those at the quad level. So that's indicating somewhere within that yellow quad is the species. And these other blue dots might be obscured also. You can drill down and see if they are obscured. Dudleya, oh, here's Gabby. Gabby, I hope you're on the line. Gabby McLean, married to Cliff, and gorgeous Dudleya photo, especially this third one. I don't know what's third, I would put it first, but it's up to the discretion of the person deciding. So that's the bread and butter of Calflora. You have distribution information for 10,000 species in the state, native, rare, invasive, non-native, and that's what most people come to the website looking for. Oh, here's one more. Oh, Bob Dollins. I hope he's on the line too. That's a really nice photo, Bob, and we hope to see more of your stuff in Calflora. And then Neil Kramer's right below his. And I didn't look at this, but I wonder if this Phacelia here is legit. Yeah, it's a little far out of the range, but not necessarily. And speaking of plant ranges, that's newly available from Calflora now, is by watershed and by climate model. You can see where the species could exist in the state. I'll show you that live on the website too. Okay, so these are popular taxon report pages that I just showed you some specific parts of, and now you get to see the whole thing. You also have, in addition to the scientific name, we have the author, common name or common names. Sometimes there's more than one. Lots of photos to scroll through, oftentimes. The bloom period, more photos, family, genus. If it's not native, we have a hyperlink here at the top to the Calypsy website where you can read more about it. So you can note the native status. And these red quads are data that we receive from Calypsy, from a data feed that we get from them. Alternate names for this aster has 1, 2, 3 alternate names that are no longer being used, but if that's the Aster chilensis, if that's what you learned it as, you can still find it by that and get crosswalked to the current name. And nursery availability. If it is a native plant that's available in nurseries, available commercially, you can find out which nurseries carry it and if they're close to you. It's called California Native Plant Link Exchange, quite a mouthful, CNPLX. So we link to that as well. Here is, for instance, a list of, now this was before the COVID. I don't know for sure that all of these nurseries and seed stores still carry it, but you can click through and check and see where exactly they're located. Okay, that was the basics on Calflora taxon report pages. Now, a little bit about map layers. Our map layers have become much more sophisticated recently, and there's a lot you can do with them. Every single map in Calflora has layers available from it. And if you're searching by, for instance, serpentine, if you're a serpentine fanatic, you can turn on the serpentine layer and see which plants are growing on which serpentine layers in Calflora. The different colors on the map indicate different geologic time frames, and I don't remember which color associates with which, but you could always click on layer information and find that out. Watersheds, we also have sub-watersheds. So for instance, with invasive plants, if there's something growing in a watershed that's upstream from you, that's a good thing to know. And if it's downstream from you, it's also important to know. But watershed, finding out what grows in which watershed and which sub-watershed is really important. Precipitation, querying by precipitation might not be the most useful thing, but the precipitation layer algorithm feeds information about the precipitation across the state to help us determine what would grow well where for the planting guide. I also just think that's so pretty. I have to show that as the colors. All these little pastel areas are protected areas. And as you zoom into your chapter, you'll see that they become more distinct, like these channel islands here. And if you want to know what exactly grows in the protected area near me, you can use what grows here and type in your protected area, and then find a list of all the species that grow there. You can also query by what's blooming now to have a list of everything that's blooming now in a protected area that you're interested in. Of course, Cnps chapters, and I already have a slide in here showing the plant lists and surveys in your Cnps chapter, which has some gaps, which I'm looking to you to help fill, hopefully. All right, that was map layers. Now for the planting guide, I'm going to go online. And here's the planting guide from the calflora.org homepage. Here's where I'm going to click, and I'll just show you that. Okay, so here we are on a taxon report page for this sand dune wallflower, and I'm going to click on the sunflower to go back to the home page and the planting guide. Now, either I'd say in the chat, if you could, I'll open up layers and go down to your, I'm going too fast, slow down, Cynthia. Layers, region, could open protected area. Let's just do Cnps chapter because I want to go to a location that's in your Cnps chapter. And in the chat, if you could type an intersection within your chapter that I should look up, then we can see what would grow well there. So let's see, I guess I have to open up the chat now and see, or the Q&A. CCH question mark. Oh, did I not explain that? CCH stands for California Consortium of Herbaria. Sorry if I didn't explain that in the chat. Okay, type in an address or a cross street into the chat, please, so that we can look up and see what would grow well there. Oh, here we go. Angeles Crest Highway, Upper Big Tom Canyon. Thank you, Lance. No, it's not. It has to be kind of formatted in a way that it understands. All right. I'm not sure if I can do cross street like that. Let's try it. It doesn't really know what I mean. All right. Well, in this case, we'll look at, let me just back out because I do not know this area at all. Waterman Mountain, Twin Peaks East. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Well, if you wanted to do, if this is where you live, or if this is where you're going to do a restoration site, you could decide if it's low water. Let's actually go closer to this stream so we know it's not low water. Let's say it's riparian. It's not low water. I'll say it's a little bit shady. And then under more criteria, well, let's just see what we get with riparian and shady for this area. And then we can decide if the list is too long and overwhelming, we can tighten our criteria and that'll limit it a bit. And this is like the little brain, the little hourglass spinning and going through all the precipitation layers and all the all these layers, soil layers, pH, salinity, depth, texture, calcium carbonate, available water, I forget what that stands for, serpentine area, is it serpentine? It's going through annual precipitation, wet season, temperature range, December. All of these are factors in this algorithm to see what will grow well here. 156, it's a lot. And we can fold up the map. And this butterfly, I'm sure you can guess what that means, pollinator species, bloom wheel, photos, and then of course you can click over to the taxon report for any of these. You can also get to CNPLX to see if it's available from your local nursery or not. And location suitability shows you why was this species chosen. Because the plant tolerances match the location values. And this is also showing where the yarrow grows nearby. And if 156 is too much, you can tighten up your criteria. So let's say in the same ecoregion and in the same county and within 10 miles, yes, use soil factors to choose plants. Yes, omit plants at the edge of their tolerances. And yes, easy to establish. So this is tightening it as much as we can. And I'm not going to say plants that grow well with, if you already have something in your garden and you want things that grow well with it, you could type that here. Lance didn't mention that. Okay, so now it's thinking again, going through all those layers that I was showing you before, the climate, and to see which tolerances match, the plant tolerances match the location values. 32, so we went from what, 156 down to 32 by tightening up our criteria here. And let's just scroll through this list, and you guys, you know your chapter, you know your region, you know what grows well here. Does anything jump out at you as being surprising, or I mean, I hope they all seem appropriate, but if there's something that just seems to not be right, you could maybe type it in the chat.
Hey, Cynthia.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we could try a different address because that one is actually smack in the middle of the mountains where nobody lives. I suggest some different cross streets. So from the chat, it looks like we have the suggestion of Linda Vista and Lida, and I can spell that for you if you need it.
Linda Vista and Lida.
Yes.
It knows where that is. Is that right?
That looks right to me. If
could zoom in
I
and
think
see.
the person who suggested it, if you
Oh
want.
yeah, there's Lida.
That's right.
It's at least a Lida and a Linda Vista way. I assume it's the right one. Okay, so now does that person want tight criteria? Well, I guess I could start with tight. I guess I won't say riparian because it's probably not. Shady? Do you think it's shady? Margaret?
That area has a lot of big trees, so I would suggest that it is shady.
Okay. So let's
sorry, the person who suggested it said it's sunny.
Okay. All right. So we'll leave these tight constraints here, these 6, and then we'll loosen up here. Just change those and see what we get. Oh, it's right by a golf course. 123. Wow, with tight constraints like that, we still got 123. That seems like a lot to me. All right, I'll just scroll through these, and you guys can, you know your region, you know your plants. Tell me if something seems awry or if that looks about right. And if you want to know, oh, where could I get this milkweed? Or why was this milkweed added to my list? Let's first look at that. Location suitability. So this milkweed tolerates this elevation, this precipitation, this wet season, this pH, this max salinity, all of these things, and the location values match that. If I had said omit plants at the edge of their tolerances, we would get some that were really close to not fitting in here, and maybe even just a smidge too high or a smidge too low on the list. And that this is another someone who lived, gosh, where did she live? She was saying, but I know that these plants grow well here and they're not showing up on my list. And we said, well, if you know of wild plant populations that you could add to Calflora, that way the algorithm will pick those up and start suggesting them. So if there's something that should be on this list that's not, that could be because we don't have sufficient information about the species to be able to suggest it. And it usually, let's see what it says here on the plant location suitability. So within this area, it found 13 records and decided that that was sufficient for suggesting it, given our constraints. So that's the planting guide. Are there any questions about the planting guide before I go back to my PowerPoint while we have this open? I guess Margaret will let me know if there's burning questions, right, Margaret?
Right, no burning questions right now.
Okay, from current slide. Audience selects location criteria while looking at my screens. We did that. Now let's talk about iNaturalist. And I actually I canceled the after party. I sometimes do. If you guys want to do this, we can do it another time. But I have 2 small kids and my husband's out of town, so I don't have time to do an after party tonight. Although it's usually really fun. And if you're interested in entering your chapter surveys into Calflora, I'd love to help you, and we can go over that another time. But first, let's do INAT and then your questions. Okay, so these are, that's not iNaturalist. Okay, before I go to iNaturalist, these are the surveys that do exist in your chapter area, these green squares. And as you can see, to me, I mean, I don't know your chapter that well, but to me, it looks like there are a lot of gaps in areas that I'm probably you guys have been to this kind of like area here. I hope you can see my cursor. So area here, and then up here in the northwestern part of your chapter. And there's this big gap here. So if you have plant lists of species that you've seen when traveling to places where there's not a blue square, which there are, oh, look down here in the just north of Malibu and Santa Monica over here, that's valuable information that we don't have. And this is surprisingly a lot of gaps compared to other chapters. So I would be happy to help you guys with that, but not tonight. So now let's go to INAT. And so here we are from the Calflora homepage, and you can go to add observations, and we do get an automatic feed from iNaturalist, a data feed every month. But if there are things that you want to add from your iNaturalist account into Calflora, let's see. Here, I don't think Farlyn is on this call, but I happen to know her handle, and I was looking at her stuff the other day, so I'm just using this as an example. And you can search by a certain species, scientific name, common name, start date, end date, or by a region. That's another thing we could do, is go to your chapter and look for what's an iNaturalist that is not yet in Calflora. So let's see if Farlyn has anything. No, she doesn't botanize down here. And if you wanted to add this, if this looks like a legitimate, not planted, but wild observation, like I would say this one, then you click on the number and you can look at it more closely, see the location close up, or add it to Calflora. That's how you get records from iNaturalist into Calflora. And the CCH, which, thank you for stopping me there, that stands for California Consortium of Herbaria, the specimens, those are automatically added, all of them. We don't filter those. They are really, really excellent in terms of ID, because they're specimens and multiple people look at the specimens and confirm the ID. A long time ago, the location information from CCH was not necessarily that accurate. So they just didn't have the GPS and the capabilities that we have now. So they might list an intersection, or they might say Table Rock. And there's a lot of Table Rocks, and there's a lot of intersections that, have similar names. So sometimes the locations aren't right with the CCH, but the IDs are generally really good. That's how you pull iNaturalist data into Calflora. Orchid mentioned the photo contest that we have coming up in May. And if you want to be part of the photo contest, and if you want to make your photos and your observations available to everybody so that people can benefit from what you've seen, and it's not just kind of stored on your computer on your Excel spreadsheet, then you go to add observations. And if you do have photos, you can go to multiple photo upload and then drag photos into this box here, and you can add multiple photos in one observation, or you can add single photos and multiple observations. You can show as cards and list, and there's a video here demonstrating how to do that at the bottom. And that's a great way to enter the photo contest. You can also add photos other ways. You can use our phone app. You can use this add observations, plant observation entry, new record, and then scroll down to add a photo and add one photo. I wanted to mention that plant ranges are new on Calflora. So let's go back to the planting guide, and let's pick a species from our results, something that would grow well. Oh, this castellaria is pretty. Ceanothus. Let's look at the Ceanothus. I'm going to go to, again, this is Nursery Availability, Location Suitability, and then let's go to Calflora Text on Report page. All species that are native to California have this plant range next to it. It doesn't make sense for invasives because they thrive and it's not that interesting. They thrive in so many places. But for native plants, plant range, and here it is by watershed, the potential habitat, so where the Ceanothus could grow, by watershed, and then we also have it here by climate model. And the results are different depending on which algorithm you look at, and you can overlay individual observations on top of that to see, why is this being selected? So the watershed model did take this area up here by Sacramento, and the climate model did not. Let's look down here where you guys are. Climate model. So it showed up in the planting guide, the Ceanothus, as would grow well in your chapter, but look at how little there is in your chapter. Wow, that's interesting. And here under location suitability, oh, no, I must have been looking in the wrong place. There's 113 records nearby. So that explains it, why it shows up. Oh, I'm too far south. Maybe that's why. Oh, I didn't update it. Okay, that makes more sense. There's no dot, so why does it say it's suitable there? Okay, so I hadn't updated it yet. There you go. And so every species, let's just do one more. The range. Ooh, gosh, the Clarkians, they get me every time. Dudleya. All right, here's some Dudleya. Let's look at the text on report page for this Dudleya, chalk Dudleya, and the plant range for it. So yeah, down where you guys are, not up in Northern California, according to the watershed, and then the climate model, similar. But the climate model is a little bit more restrictive. This whole areas out here that were showing up in the watershed algorithm are not showing up in the climate model. And if you wanted to turn on more layers, so you can look at ecoregions. Here's the watershed, so that would match up with the watershed suitability. And then you can turn on individual observations to update that. Okay, so that's plant ranges, and map layers I went over. Oh, that's still reading them. Okay, there they are. Here are the layers that you can look at in Calflora. And if you're wondering what it is that these colors mean, here's the legend. So purple is a simple point. Zoom in a little bit. The blue square is an obscured point. So since this is a Dudleya, some Dudleyas are subject to poaching, and I'm not sure if this one is particular. I know the Farinosa is subject to a lot of poaching, and most of those are obscured, but some people have obscured this chalk Dudleya also. That's what the blue square is. Line or polygon is in pink, so it's not just one. For instance, right here, it's this whole area of this chalk Dudleya. Specimen is this blue circle, and then survey or checklist. Somebody saw this Dudleya within a specific area, and that's what that green dot is. I'm curious about this polygon. Let's see what happens. Hillary Mills. Maybe you know her? Is she on this call? San Diego. Huh. Wow. So there it is. That's where she was. It's interesting that she did this polygon. And as you get in closer, so the pink outline is her polygon. Okay, so that's plant ranges.
Cynthia, we have a quick question related
Yes.
to Dudleya. Lance Benner is wondering whether the detailed locations are visible, which it looks like they are, because he's wondering, it's a plant that often gets poached.
The Dudleyas, so right now, the way that it's done is that the contributor decides if it should be obscured or not, and that's what in this legend. So the blue squares are obscured locations, and then the surveys and checklists are pretty much obscured too, because it's saying within this polygon somewhere is this specific chalk Dudleya. If we looked at, let's look at Dudleya farinosa. I went to the home page, and I'm going to look at Dudleya farinosa. That one has a lot more obscured locations because it's much more likely to be, it's likely to be poached. So if you look at this map, I'm going very quickly, but I went from the home page to the text on report, and then I clicked on one of the counties, Sonoma, I think, and open up the legend here, and you can see that the squares indicate obscured point, and this green square means it's a survey or a checklist, so that's also obscured. And then let's see if these simple points are older. That one is a bit old. Oh no, that one is obscured, so that one's a square. Obscured. There's one way up here, really? Okay, this is a so a lot of these are from our data feed or feeds. We get a lot of different data feeds, as I'd mentioned earlier, and the CCH observations from 1912. So although that says that is, well, it says that it's a specimen and it says that it's at this location, I would be surprised if it was actually there. I don't think in 1912 they had such good georeferencing, and you can drill down. So go to record detail. So the only thing they had for location description was Monterio, and then Berkeley took that description and added a very precise lat long to it. So it looks like it's actually at that location. It might not be, but a little bit more about obscuring. So as you're adding an observation to Calflora, give it the help. Obscure. So here are the 4 options for records. I'll make this a little bigger. For records in Calflora, publish, that means any Calflora can see the record and see where it is. Unpublished means only you or members of your group, if you create like a specialty group, can see the record. Private is the same as unpublished, but it's kind of like out of purgatory. Unpublished is it's the purgatory that the records are in when they arrive into the database, and then you as the owner can decide, yes, I want to keep this private. So that's an active decision that you've made. I don't want anybody to see it. And then obscured allows users to know it's somewhere in the area, but you won't know exactly where. Okay, so that was plant ranges and map layers. And I think I'm ready I have about 8 minutes of questions.
So I have a question directly related to what you were just talking about, so I'm going to ask that one first.
Okay.
Dolan Hunter asks if polygons simply signify populations within a certain species range, or what do polygons mean exactly?
Who asked that question?
Dolan Hunter.
DOLAN?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question, Dolan. There's a lot of different there's a lot of different uses for polygons in Calflora, and you can like, okay, I'll just show you. So from the home page, go to observation search, and you can go down to your chapter. I have my center point set up near where I tend to botanize. So let's just draw a polygon around part of the Angeles National Forest here. So this is one use of a polygon. You can stop drawing and you can say, since 2010, what native plants have been found in my polygon? So not in the map area, not anywhere, but just in my polygon. And there were 45 records found within that polygon. And in this case, they are all simple points. So I was hoping there would actually be a polygon in my polygon. And if there had been a polygon in my polygon, then I could show you how that works. Let's see, how can I make sure there's a polygon in my search results? Let's say in map area, let's do any status. Sometimes the invasive plants get more polygons. So it's a nuanced answer, Dolan, to your question. And oh yeah, here we go. Great. So tamarisk, I knew it was going to be an invasive. Let's just look at this. Location close-up. Here is a polygon. Wow, it's a pretty fancy polygon. And the observer is saying that there's tamarisk all in this polygon, and they might have said the exact plant count. Let's see, elevation, no, it's plant count. Number of plants is just 1+. Okay, so that's not that descriptive, but in this whole polygon, there's tamarisk. So that's another use of polygon. So it can be a search query polygon. It can be a polygon saying there's one species within this polygon. It can also be a survey area. So because I have your chapter surveys here open already, so I'm querying San Gabriel Mountain Cnps chapter surveys, and let's just fold up the map, and hopefully I'll sort them by name. Some of them are older and some of them are new, and you'll probably recognize some of these locations in here, hopefully. And these are places where somebody at some time said, here's a list of plants that I saw at Lightning Ridge Nature Trail. Jane Strong and Tom Chester saw, let's see, what did they see? They saw 74 species at this location, and some of the newer ones, like let's see, actually sort by date. 2020. Okay, Newton, Rika. I wonder if any of them are on this call. So here's a pink polygon, and Newton and Rico and Susan and Audrey are saying that within this pink polygon, we saw 18 species, and we either saw one, like this narrow-leaved sword fern, we only saw one, or we saw 1+. You can also indicate negative data and say, I looked for instance, sugar pine, but I didn't see it. So then that would be a 0 here for the plant count. And that would show up as searched for but not found, which is really, really valuable information to have. So Dolan, so that's 1, 2, 3 ways you can use a polygon. You can also use a polygon. Calflora does it for you when you're obscuring your location. So I have some obscured rare plants in my observations in Calflora, and I'll just show you those polygons. So let's see, access by other obscured search. Here's a Dudleya. Okay, here's a fritillaria. So if I go here, you would see, not that you're going to harm my fritillaria, but you guys would all see where exactly it is because it's my account. But the public is going to see a quarter quad, and it'll be somewhere within the quarter quad that this Fritillaria liliacea is, and they won't know exactly where. So I think we're up to like 5 ways to use polygons in Calflora. Does that answer your question, Dolan? It's a good question and quite complex. Okay, next question, Margaret. I guess that's a yes. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually have a question of my own, which I thought of earlier. I was wondering if there is an app to upload observations, or does this have to be done on a browser? And then this actually, I think, dovetails with a question from Susan Campo, who was asking, when you use a smartphone, do you need the GPS location? I think she means, do you need the GPS turned on your phone in order to get the photo accepted to Calflora? So I think these are 2 questions about whether and how you can use a phone to upload observations.
Yeah, I use Observer Pro, which is the Calflora phone app, all the time. And one of my favorite things to do with Observer Pro is to load historical observations into it. And, as I mentioned, obscured locations, this won't work for, because you're not going to be able to get an exact point for them. And that applies to a lot of rare plants. So for rare plant treasure hunts, it's not as useful. But native plant treasure hunts, it's really fun. You can load all the observations into Observer Pro and then go revisit them. So they show up on the app. It's called, here, I can just click on this, phone applications. There's Android and iPhone. And it's free, you download it. And then here is an example of a polygon. So as you're collecting, I mentioned that if you see a large area of a specific species, you can just drag your finger across and collect a polygon. You do need to register as a data contributor with Calflora before you can use Observer Pro, because every observation into the database needs to have a name associated with it as observer and a date. And if Susan Campo was asking about photos, if you're taking photos with your phone and you're not using the app, that's fine. If you don't have location services turned on, then your photos will not have the location embedded in the EXIF of the photo. The EXIF is an associated file with a photo. And if you don't have a location embedded in your EXIF, then you can add it to Calflora. So for instance, if you're scanning some old photos, plant photos that you have, or if they're, photos from a camera that didn't have GPS, it's an older camera, you can, go to add observations, multiple photo upload, add photos here, and then you just you click on the map where exactly you were when you saw it. So I'll just show you, I'll do a little demo here. This is not my photo. It's beautiful. I wish it were my photo. It's not my photo. I actually, this is, whose photo is this? It might be Aaron Schustaff. I'm not exactly sure whose photo it is. I was using it for something, and at the time I knew. So you would go to the map and then say, when I took this photo, I was, zoom in, you figure out exactly, you say, okay, I was there, and then it accepts that location. And then if you know the species, you can type it, and if you don't, you can just say unknown, or you can say pretty, and then you say upload, and you're not done. I mentioned that purgatory when you've uploaded observations from the phone app called Observer Pro, or from here, photo upload, or from any of the ways to add data to Calflora. They arrive into your account as unpublished. Thank God, right? Because I don't know what this is, and I don't know whose photo it is, and I don't know where it was. So I don't really want anybody to be looking at this except for you guys as a demo. And then once you're ready to publish it, you can edit it some more using the editor. You can publish it right away if it's ready. You can delete it, which I will do after this presentation, or look at the details of it. So under editor is where you can change the location. You can make it obscured, and that puts it in the center of the quarter quad, as I was mentioning to Dolan, I think. Obscured, and then save it, and then nobody will know where it is except for you.
So Cynthia, I wanted to add something that I discovered with my phone. which is that if I don't have the fine detail location, it will not add location to my photos that I don't take in Observer Pro. Observer Pro works, but I sometimes want a more granular, or I have a kind of a pro camera phone, and I can get a better picture that way. But if I don't have the enable fine location, it will not add any exif to my photos. So I thought that was an interesting thing that I discovered before your last presentation. And also, I think that's probably a mountain mahogany seed. So,
Thank you. Somebody knows what that is. That's great. It's so beautiful. Do you know who took that photo? Probably not. What you were just saying, Orchid, reminded me that if you have a fancy camera that doesn't have GPS or it doesn't have good GPS, what you can do also is use Observer Pro to take a quick photo and just get your picture in there and then add the pretty photos to it later. So here you are, you're editing your observation, and you want to add all the more pretty ones from your fancy phone. Your fancy camera. Then you go to add photo, and you can upload from your computer, transfer them to your computer and upload as many as you want. You can also add them from your phone using Observer Pro. But if you have a fancy camera and photos on your computer, it's better to do it this way. I know that's a little different than what you were saying, but does that make sense, Orchid?
Yes, I also figured that out by myself after a while, that it would be better to take a photo with Observer Pro and then add photos just from my phone that weren't in Observer Pro, but were at the same location.
Okay, good. I'm glad you figured that out. And not to put you on the spot, I just want to see what you have in here because I like what. Oh, you got 3 now. Ooh, very nice. And so as Orchid adds more observations, the map will get more little purple dots on it. And as she might have more in her account now that are unpublished. I have lots of unpublished things in my account that I'm just not ready to share. It's not ready for prime time, as John likes to say. So, and anybody in your, that like John L. Thompson has some, if you want to ooh and ah with some beautiful photos, you can look people up and just see what kinds of species they've been finding. Wow, across the state, and polygons too. That's pink for polygons. That's great. And let's fold up the map and just ooh and ah so much on. Woo! Oh, the Calflora. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I could spend way too many hours looking through John's photos or other people's photos too. It's really okay. So, but I won't get distracted. Other questions?
We have 2 more questions. One of them I think is a really good question. They're both great questions, but one of them in particular, I was wondering myself, and Gabi is asking, if you want to report an observation to both Calflora and iNaturalist, which one is better to do first, or do you have to do both in detail versus upload from one to the other? And then I would add to that, should you only upload to one? Because you pull some of the observations from iNaturalist, what's the best way to approach that?
I don't worry about duplicates. If we have a duplicate detector and we're really not concerned about duplicates at all. So if you want, I work for Calflora. I think you should add your photos first to Calflora. If we do pull your observation from iNat, we only get the first photo and we cannot use it as a reference photo. So if you want to become famous, like your colleagues here on this PowerPoint with their reference photos and like, this is about to be famous, this photo, wow. Add them to Calflora and which order, I guess if you're going to do both iNat and Calflora, it really doesn't matter the order, and duplicates don't matter. And yeah, does that answer the question?
I think that does answer. Yes, great. So we do have one final question from Lance Benner, who asks, For obscured locations for sensitive species, can the people who operate Calflora and qualified researchers still see the detailed locations, or are they obscured from everyone except the person who uploads them?
If you'd like to share your like your rare plant exact locations that you've obscured for the Calflora public with other people, especially, so here's how you can do that. You go to Calflora homepage and then My Calflora. And here you have the news, you have your observations, your profile, your groups, if you're part of any Calflora groups, comments, that can be comments you've made on other records, comments people have made on your records, your preferences, your searches, your email alerts. So if you want to know every time John Thompson publishes anything in Calflora, you can set up an email alert for his name, plant list, and your shakes. So under preferences, observations, so there's a lot of preferences you can set. Your center point, as you notice, my map kept coming back to the Bay Area because I've set my center point to be the Bay Area. Links to my portfolio that if you want to share that, you can share the hyperlink with your friends for your next job application. Email notifications, how do you want to get your activity in your groups? Do you want it weekly or daily? Comments on your records. I want mine hourly because I want to change them right away. Do I want to show my email address or have it be hidden? More about using Observer Pro, adding historical observations to Observer Pro so you can see them when you're out in the field and revisit other people's published observations. You can add background noise and polygons to Observer Pro so that if you're certain area you do want to cover and don't. Anyways, getting a little using Observer Pro with groups, photo sharing. This is where you set your Creative Commons license, or you say you don't want anybody to use your photos. And then here, observation sharing. So if you want to share the original coordinates of obscured observations with CNDDB, you check this here. And if you have private observations you want to make available, CNDDB again stands for the California Natural Diversity Database, that's run by the state of California. They really appreciate knowing a lot of information about rare plants in California. And we have a CNDDB data collection form that if you're finding rare plants and adding them to Calflora, they really want you to use this form with all of their questions on it. It's not mandatory to fill that out. But anyways, if you check this, they can see the original coordinates. And if you check this, they can see your private observations. If you don't, then they can't. I do want them to have access to my stuff. So that's why I've shared it with them. And then if you want to share it with more than just the CNDDB, you can go to groups. Don't get overwhelmed. I'm part of a lot of groups, and you can join groups, Plant ID Help group. I mean, there's a group for everybody. There's a place for everybody here. And once you're in a group, if you're adding observations to that group, like Cnps Finless Obispo has a group, SAC has a group. Okay, but once you're adding observations to your group, then you're sharing, like if you have a private observation that's private that you're not obscuring, still the people in your group can see the real lat long for that observation. Does that answer Lisa's question?
I believe that does, yes. We have a follow-up question from John Thompson.
Oh, hi, John. Little shout out. Yay, John.
John says, do you imagine any way to vet access to obscured data when an original observer does not reply to a sharing request or when the observer is deceased?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, if they're just not responding, you could just ask me if I could contact them, and I maybe I'll have better luck. If they're deceased, that is a great question. Gosh, we haven't actually encountered that before, John. So we don't have a protocol in place for that, and it might be on a case-by-case basis. So are you talking about Dean Taylor, or maybe you have someone in mind, or are you just thinking about in general if this happens? Is
John,
it good? Yeah.
John, do you want me to turn on your mic so you can talk directly to Cynthia? I'm going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead.
Actually, yes, Dean came to mind, whom I never met, but I saw lots of his observations and, of course, still see them. It's a sensitive thing. I mean, I've contacted people, cold called them, so to speak, off of iNaturalist and had some really good results. But on the other hand, I've made comments on other people's records where I was kindly trying to say, I don't think this is what you think it is. And one, I don't think I've ever heard back on that. So it's an uncertain protocol to cold contact people about either their errors, maybe, or to find sensitive locations. You probably know that when I think I first wrote you for some information, I tried to establish some cred.
You did. You have cred.
Yes, as not a bulb collector, not a plant picker, not a picnicker, and any of those things that hurt the plant. So but it does occur to me that there are a lot of records we have where the observers are just beyond being contacted. So I'm wondering if there would be a protocol for giving access to some of the stuff that many of us would like to do our own little rare plant search to see if this thing is still there after 20, 30, 50, 80 years.
Yeah, I think that let's do that on a case-by-case basis. And if you could contact me with either the list of observations or the list of observers and specifically what it is that you're looking for, then I could talk with Hannah, who knew Dean really well, and maybe Julie, and we could maybe come up with a protocol for that. It's a very good question. And these I just pulled up, so I looked up observation search from the Calflora homepage, searching all the observations in Calflora for rare. Wasn't this rare? Yeah, native status is rare. Dean Taylor is the observer anywhere in the state, and it looks like a couple outside the state. He has 1,000. Dean Taylor has 1,098 records of only rare plants, and I mean it's so prolific, and it's great that he got his observations into Calflora, and they're really valuable. And yeah, so let's have a conversation with Hannah and Julie about that, John, and deal with that on a case by case basis. It's a very good question.
That's all the open questions we have.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And if you guys have any more questions or you're shy about asking them now, from the Calflora homepage, you can go to Contact Calflora. Here's our email address, and then please include a hyperlink in your question if you're asking about a specific thing. Like if you're saying, I'm looking at this Dudleya, include the URL for this Dudleya, and I have questions about it as you contact us, and that'll make it easier for us to answer your questions. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Cynthia. That's a lot of great information. It looks like you could really get lost in all the details there. I hope that nobody gets so wrapped up in that they forget to go outside and look at the real plants.
Good point.
Okay, so if there aren't any other further questions, then I guess we're done for this evening. Any other announcements or anything that you can think of, Margaret or Orchid?
I'd just like to mention that I think since we're recording this, we are going to upload this to YouTube eventually. Is that correct?
That's the plan.
So this presentation will be available if anyone missed it or missed parts of it or wants to share it with anybody.
We expect to do a little editing, chopping off the ends and things like that. And so it may be a little while before it gets done, but we plan to do that as soon as we can.
And Roger Clem said that he was going to go fill in some of those gaps in the mountains.
Go, Roger.
Go, Roger. That's awesome.
You could please invite some other people too, but don't expect us to join you on the bike. At least me. Okay, then thanks again for everybody who joined us tonight. And I forgot how many we had max. I think I saw 59 or something.
Great.
Thank very much for Orchid and Margaret, and especially to Cynthia for taking us through all that really good content.
Thank you guys. Really nice to be here with you, even though it's virtual. And have a good rest of your evening.
Right, you too.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.